And Abraham came near and said, "Would you also destroy the righteous with the wicked? Suppose there were 50 righteous within the city. Would you also destroy the place and not spare it for the 50 righteous that were in it? Far be it from you to do this, to slay the righteous with the wicked, so that the righteous should be as the wicked. Far be it from you. Shall not the judge of the earth do right?" Bargaining with the Lord. Absolutely amazing. How can one argue or bargain with the infinite? Does God change his mind? Is he susceptible to flattery and praise? Will he alter the course of his providence if we can come up with a good enough reason for what we think he should do? Imagine Abraham, in hopes of saving his brother Lot, who lived in the condemned city of Sodom, coming near to the Lord and posing that rhetorical question of whether God would destroy the city if there were still good people remaining. It's interesting that he didn't seem to really trust the Lord to be merciful or just. He specified the number of 50 of the good people so that perhaps there could be at least found 50 good people there. And it's interesting, even before the Lord could answer him, he tried to appeal to the Lord's vanity by calling him the judge of all the earth. Now, Jehovah's response is even more interesting. He didn't condemn Abraham for his tactics. He didn't obscure or answer in a crazy way. He actually seemed to go along with it. Yes, he said if there were 50 just found in Sodom, the city would be spared. But as we know, this didn't satisfy Abraham. He then posited whether Sodom would be saved if there were 5 less, 45. Again, obtaining a positive response, he dropped the number from 45 to 40, then to 30, then to 20, and finally to 10. With each drop, he increased the possibility that the city would be saved, that Lot and his family would be saved. And yet, in the end, there were not found 10 good people there, and the city was consumed. Lot and some others of his family escaped, but the city was so filled with wickedness that it was not preserved. Left with the literal sense here, this is a very confusing story. Does God change his mind like that? Can we bargain with him to our advantage? Well, it's fortunate that we have the heavenly doctrines of the new church to describe what's taking place there spiritually. For it's a beautiful description of the Lord's love and mercy towards the entire human race. The story depicts a phase in the Lord's development while he was in the world, when he was especially aware of human frailties and the evil present with people, described by the hellish state of Sodom. The dialogue between Abraham and Jehovah was actually an internal reflection by the Lord regarding how little good and truth needed to be present for a person to still be saved and go to heaven. The numbers that are used of the good people remaining there, the 50, the 45, the 40, the 30, the 20, the 10, describe various stages of regeneration which enable people to receive heaven in their hearts. 50, the first number offered by Abraham, means a full regenerate state. Truths full of goods, as the writings say. This is the ideal, a state in which we have a firm knowledge of what's true and a powerful love of living that truth. In fact, there's so much of good within that there's a pure delight in seeing truth and an inner satisfaction in doing it. When this state exists, life is preserved. The city's not destroyed. While there still may be some evils clinging to the regenerate person, they can easily be separated in the next life when the natural body's put off. The good is not destroyed, and any evils the person has are not destructive to their spiritual life. Yet what of those who are not as perfect as this? Those who know a lot about what the Word says, but just haven't put it into practice quite yet. Perhaps the 50 righteous will lack 5. Number 45 describes those who are well along the path in regeneration, but still have many evils with which they're dealing. As the writings say, with whom there should be less of good, but this good nevertheless is conjoined with truths. Yes, with the 45, there's an inner ruling love of what is good, but it may not always be obvious. The person still drawn to what's evil has to resist it with all his or her strength, from time to time at least. What becomes of these? As Jehovah will spare the city for 45, so he will raise into heaven those who have the potential of fully joining together what is good and what is truth, even if they haven't entirely done it yet in this world. But what of those who seem to be in constant struggle or turmoil? What of those whose lives seem to be filled with difficulty, doubts, spiritual challenges, apparent failures along the way? Is there hope for them? Well, indeed there is. The Lord will spare the city for the sake of 40, depicting those who have been in temptations. Although when the person is in the midst of these spiritual struggles, it may seem like evil is winning because it's present everywhere. Yet within that pain, it says the Lord is holding the person in what is good, giving them hope, and that's the strength from which they are able to overcome with the Lord's help. So the Lord permits temptations in this life that through them good and truth may be more firmly ensconced in our lives, strengthened, and eventually become the source of eternal happiness. Well, if those who are facing many spiritual struggles can be saved, what of those that just don't seem to have a lot of temptations? Because they've not been severely tempted, does it mean they cannot love good and enter heaven? Well, Jehovah will save the city for the sake of 30. For this represents those who have been in some combats against evils. One doesn't have to face all their evils on this earth. All that the Lord requires is that we make a beginning, as we take the first steps. The Lord's providence protects us from facing too much here on this earth if we're not prepared for it. What's important is what choices we make in our life here, not how many spiritual struggles we've been through. There's plenty of opportunity for development in the next life. Yet what of those who never seem to have any spiritual struggles at all, who seem to go through their natural lives without deeply questioning spiritual values or having any struggles to do what's right? Does that mean that they don't really love the Lord and the neighbor? Well, the Lord will save the city for the sake of 20, those with whom there are states of the affection of good. Even those that haven't proceeded very far in the path of regeneration are accepted by the Lord if they have some caring for what is good. Perhaps they have some very simple principles to follow in their lives. And even if in their halting attempts to follow them, they stumble from time to time, still there's some affection for good there. All right then, what about those who have made a lot of bad choices in their life, harming themselves and others, who seem to be selfish on a regular basis or thoughtlessly say or do things that are embarrassing or hurtful? Can they be saved? Jehovah will not destroy the city for the sake of 10. Even those who seem to have little good in their life, but still have an affection for what is true, can be saved. People who seem to have little concern for others can acquire a heavenly life just by virtue of espousing and caring about the ideals of truth, even if they're only living them in a very half-hearted way. Still, that affection is there, and it's what the Lord can build on in the next life, a seed planted here that can grow up in the next life forever. The one and the only thing that keeps people out of heaven is an active opposition to the Lord, elevating self and the world above all things that are good and true. Within this is an intense focus on oneself, to the exclusion of all others, and actually carries within it a hatred of others and of the Lord himself. This is the only path that leads to hell, that rejects salvation and heavenly joy. Now we're told that these reflections by the Lord brought him tremendous comfort, seeing a path to fulfill his mission, saving the human race. For his essential love was that love of saving the human race. Or as the writing stated, the Lord wills to save everyone, and by his mighty power to draw all towards heaven, that is, towards himself. Reflecting on how many can be saved, the numbers 50 down to 10, even though the lower numbers may seem to be a bit undeserving, satisfied his soul because he saw how he could bring happiness to so many. While we're not the Lord, this perspective can help us at times when we're dealing with the foibles and evils of people around us. We can look around at the people we know, perhaps those who irritate us regularly, or those that we find it very difficult to deal with. It's so easy to judge them harshly, thinking they don't care about what's true or what's good. But perhaps we should be thinking about what good or what truth may exist within their lives. True, we can never know their spiritual states, but we might consider how the Lord looks at them, seeking for what would enable them to be saved. In effect, praying for our neighbors, thinking of them. As Abraham stepped down the numbers from 50 to 10, we can think of the good, the truth that might exist in others. The potential that's there, even if we don't see it on the surface as much as we'd like to. We don't need to focus on what's evil there. And also at times, we can look at our own lives and wonder if salvation's possible for us. We may have experienced times when there seems to be the guiding light of truth and the strength of good within, 50 good people. But we also know many other times when we haven't entirely lived up to our ideals, the 45. The times of 40 when we're besieged with doubts and hellish struggles. Even more the times of 30 when we're just doing our normal lives and occasionally have a challenge or two, but we don't think much about spiritual things. It's not terribly active in our lives. And then we can become painfully aware of the times when it seems that there are but 10 good within, that there's only some affection for truth, but our attempts to carry it through have been so limited and failing. Can we be saved with that? Well, the answer that the Lord gives to us is exactly the answer he gave to Abraham. I will not destroy it for the sake of 10. Wherever there is a basic belief in the Lord, an initial desire to do what's right, the Lord is near and can lift us up. So maybe, just maybe, there's hope for us. Although the Lord is always leading us to a deeper grasp of truth, to a higher state of good, and we should never slake our efforts to follow him, to shun evils as sins, to put it away, so that we might actually be lifted up to the higher levels. He is willing to accept whatever is good and true in our lives, that he might create heaven within. It's interesting then that in spite of all the bargaining that Abraham did, not even 10 good men were found within the city, and Sodom was completely destroyed. What does it mean for us? It simply describes the fact that evil will sink down to its own level throughout our lives and then visibly in the next life. The evil which exists with a good person will be cast away to the outer regions of their lives. Good will be preserved, even as Lot was, but evil in hell will always remain so and sinks to its level. Can we then bargain with the Lord to get into heaven? Of course not. But we can reflect upon his mercy, his providential leading to save even where it may not look like it's possible to us. We cannot really save ourselves, but then we don't need to. The Lord does it for us. All we need to do is try to become better people, to shun what is evil, to learn what is true, and then to try to walk in that way. In this way, the Lord can truly preserve our souls, preserving our going out and our coming in from this time forth and even forevermore. Amen.